Good morning. It's Thursday, February 19th. A little bit of an abbreviated session. We have a joint session with the House at 10:30, but that doesn't mean that we don't get some work done. We are going to spend some time this morning with our counsel, Bradley Showman, and we're going to go down through some hemp regulation and current use. Just a little context of why we're doing this. We have been working closely with the Cannabis Control Board, Mr. Pepper, and the reason being is that with just the whole travel of where hemp has gone through the COVID times and all of that, and through the trials of setting hemp and cannabis up in the state, we have lost some regulation. Just a quick story: I was at the Grocers Association last night, and I met up with a producer of a hemp infused beverage, and she was really interested in talking to me. In fact, she sent somebody over to get me because when she found out that I was the chair of this committee, and so the conversation went like this. She said, "We need regulation." And I said, "Well, tell me why you need regulation." She said, "I need to make sure that when I am selling my product, or I'm trying to sign contracts with people that are out of this state, that they understand that I'm going to still be in business, that I'm not going to get legislated out of business. I need security, and they need security to show that Vermont understands what this business is." And so that was great, because that's kind of what this bill is. This is kind of like what we're doing. But she went on further to say, and I as well, that yes, it has been discussion in the our ag committee that we understand that when you source your product, lots of times it comes into Vermont higher than the levels that it needs to be. The THC is too high, but that when the product gets made into what you need it to be, that it's below the levels. But in a sense, you're breaking federal law by bringing that product in across state lines. He said, yes, that's very problematic. And I said, well, we have talked over and over and over again in the committee about sourcing hemp from Vermont, being that before, when thousands of acres were grown and nobody really benefited from it because of just not understanding what really needed to happen, we'd like to make sure that when the hemp growers grow, that maybe they would come to you and you guys would strike a deal and say, hey, I'll grow you 30 acres. And as long as I know that you can procure the product from me. And she says, that is great. She said, but I just want you to understand, if I was to do that, I don't need 30 acres. I need 300 acres. And I said, well, perfect. So we're on the right track then. She said, yes, please continue. And so we worked closely again with the Cannabis Control Board. Our council is going to go through the language of the fruits of our labor. And hopefully, with everything I just said, we solve the problems that we're looking to do. So, Bradley, welcome.
Thank you. And just for the language I'm going to go over was just posted to the news website. And so if you would like to pull that up and follow along, you may. Bradley Showman, Office of Legislative Counsel.
And feel free to correct anything I just said, sir. I just want to make sure that because it has been a kind of a steep learning curve going through all of this stuff. It's not very often that we get told regulate us more, and so we just need to make sure that when Brian reports us on the floor, that he's very comfortable. Parts of it. I will, yes.
So to give a little bit of background, because it is tricky to understand, perhaps the CCB will have some more information too. But hemp and marijuana, hemp and marijuana are part of the same plant, the same cannabis plant. Hemp in the state of Vermont is regulated as an agricultural product. Cannabis is not, marijuana is not. And so they're the same plant, but they have different intoxication levels. And so hemp is supposed to be less intoxicating than marijuana. But they are, up until recently, have been both Schedule 1 prohibited drugs in the federal government. And so Vermont's hemp program goes as far back as 2008, where the Secretary of Agriculture did some pilot programming about regulating and cultivating hemp for certain purposes. And part of that context was that cultivators had to sign a form saying that they know that hemp is a controlled substance under federal law. Federal law changed in 2018, where hemp, as defined by having a 0.3% THC, delta 9 THC concentration, was not considered a controlled substance. And so that kind of opened the door to permitting states to regulate hemp in a way that created agricultural opportunity for individuals. However, what also happened was that there are different strains, and this goes outside of my area of expertise a little bit, but there are different strains of hemp, different ways to process hemp that can make it more intoxicating. Different strains, Delta 8 is one of them. And so to kind of capture this increased number of intoxicating hemp-related items, the federal government in 2025 changed the definition of hemp from just Delta 9 at 0.3% THC concentration to anything, any THC concentration at 0.3%. So a lot more products are going to be excluded from the kind of hemp protection, so to speak, because of that federal change. But that is still up in the air. And so because there are people in Congress who are trying to kind of consider and grapple with this as well. So it's an evolving area of law. So we'll go to the bill here. And so I just have the language as an amendment. I'm sure that this might change, but I just had it as an amendment language. The type of amendment will be determined later. And our first section here is we're transitioning the hemp processor oversight from Title VI, from the Secretary of Agriculture, to Title VII under the Cannabis Control Board. And so everything here you will see is underlined as if it's new. It's not necessarily new, it's underlined because we're moving it. And so I will go through the places where this has changed. The Cannabis Control Board also has some information about where things have changed or why. Let's start with the finding section. I will just note for the committee that the finding section here is quite different than the finding section in current law. And actually what I'm going to do is, because I'm going to go back and forth, I'm going to unshare my screen and then just share everything. So I can go back and forth with the statute as written in the statute here. Okay, so I'm back. So I just want to note that the findings could potentially use some work. I think the good finding here is that the legality of hemp products in interstate commerce is unsettled and continues to evolve. But the findings here are vague, and findings in current law talk about hemp as an agricultural product, what it's used for, the history of using hemp in agriculture. Those findings aren't here anymore, and that would be something for the committee to consider. But we'll go on to the legal analysis here. And so these definitions are brought over in large part from the statute as currently written. We have essentially three categories: growers, producers, and processors related to hemp. So we define growing as planting, cultivating, harvesting, or drying of hemp, selling, storing, or transporting hemp grown by a grower. And then grow also means to produce. The word produce is the term the federal government uses to talk about making hemp, growing hemp. And so we copied that language, but we also use the word grow because it's an agriculture product. Grower means a person who's registered by the board and the U.S. Department of Agriculture to produce hemp. Grower also means producer. And one thing that has changed throughout this is it's changing the Secretary of Agriculture to replace the agriculture with the cannabis board. We have the definition of hemp, which has not changed. The definition of hemp or hemp-infused products, with just refers to the federally defined tetrahydrocannabinol concentration level. I'll just say THC level for hemp derived from or made by processing hemp plants and parts, and then some items that it might be used for. And we're going down, and so one change here, and so notwithstanding subdivision A, so notwithstanding what we define as a hemp or hemp product, hemp or hemp-infused products do not include any substance, manufacturing, intermediary, or product that is prohibited or deemed regulated cannabis by the board, or is not lawful in interstate commerce. And so this is a little bit of a change. This piece here is not lawful in interstate commerce, is a change from current law. Current law says is a reference to 0.3 THC concentration. This is likely a change to just cover the changes in federal law. But it is a signal that hemp products can be unlawful in interstate commerce. And it won't be considered a hemp product if it is unlawful in interstate commerce. We're going down to other exceptions here that are currently in the law. Process, we define processing as storing, drying, or trimming, handling, or compounding hemp. Process includes transporting, aggregating, packing hemp from a single grower or multiple growers. And also includes manufacturing hemp products or hemp-infused products. Processor is a person who is licensed by the board to process hemp. Okay, and so this section has changed quite a bit from the current law. And so what this section does is categorize people handling hemp in different ways in 3 categories: producers, which are growers, processors, and hemp products. And so essentially how the board is setting up the regulatory scheme is if you're a producer, processor, or have a hemp product, you register those products with the board and the nature of those activities. And then provide evidence that those activities conform to the requirements of federal law and regulation, and then apply for registration or renewal on the form provided by the board, and then pay the accompanying fee. Same thing with processors. All persons engaged in processing hemp, including trade and hemp-derived cannabinoids and process intermediaries, shall be licensed by the board. You apply for the license. All products need to be registered with the board prior to sale within the state. You apply for registration or renewal. And then there's some information about how you can be denied if you fail to establish the activities, comply with state law, refusal of the board or refusing to allow the board to investigate your facilities, failure to pay the fee, and failure to submit information.
So how does one show evidence of the THC level?
And so you'll be able to provide testing. So it's chemical testing or scientific testing about the concentration of the THC in that given product.
On site?
You should be. And so the board might take the products and review it to make sure. And but the growers or the producers should be able to do that on site. Or sometimes there might be an off-site situation that they could, it would have to be in state likely, but there'd be an off-site situation where they could send it to for testing and things of that sort. I think that my sense is that would depend on the grower or the producer, who's responsible for making that determination.
Okay.
I'm going to pull up the law on this section as it currently exists. And and so what is removed what is removed entirely is this section. So this section, hemp as an agricultural product, is removed. It is still defined as an agricultural product in the statute. So that's not changing. But this section here is being removed because it refers to the pilot programs that started in 2014 and continued in 2018, the federal pilot programs that permitted hemp to permitted states to authorize cultivation of hemp. And so this section of the statute as it currently exists refers to federal law that has expired or been repealed or substantially changed. And so likely the thinking, this drafting is from the Cannabis Control Board. So likely the thinking is that these provisions refer to expired federal law and just need to be brought over. And hemp is defined as an agricultural product elsewhere. However, there's one piece at the very end that I want to bring to the attention of the committee. And this piece here, the cultivation of hemp shall be subject to and comply with the required agricultural practices adopted under this title, is nowhere to be found in the bill as we have it here before us. And so that may be something for the committee to consider, that whether hemp cultivation should comply with required agricultural practices. And a thing to discuss moving forward. I just wanted to flag that for you, that this is not in the bill.
But if our intention is to move the oversight out of Title VI and Title VII, why do we care whether they satisfy the RAPs?
And I think that is certainly a policy question for one, in a discussion with the Agency of Agriculture. Any discharges into the waters of the state could be souped up into federal regulation anyway, whether we like it or not.
Okay.
And so I think that would be an issue to really grapple with here, especially.
Well, sorry, I apologize to interrupt, but just the thought on that is, as we're fleshing this thing out, if it is our intention to make sure that they are ag product and that we want that product grown in the state, I think it gives the farmer more protection if they are under an RAP. But I again, I want to discuss it. I just think that if they are complying and if somebody doesn't like the idea of what they're doing and growing in an area because of whatever, maybe misinformation, misunderstanding, or they just don't want that there, I think it gives them protection to be under an RAP with the Agency of Ag.
Okay.
That's exactly right, especially with respect to municipal bylaw, regulation by municipal bylaw. That is the key to be protected from municipal bylaw is being subject to the RAPs.
Yep.
So definitely things for the committee to consider. I want to flag that piece for you.
Okay, so can we make a note of that? I want to make sure that we get that in there.
Sure. I think it's important. And I didn't even think about the water issue or the municipal piece.
Sometimes when you pull a string, the shirt comes undone.
Yeah.
And so we want to make sure that the intent is clear from the beginning.
Our clothing, huh?
Please, please.
And this is how hemp is currently regulated. So as I said before, the Cannabis Control Board is trying to kind of streamline producers, processors, products, and try to make the statute just a little clearer on that. But it's also losing, the statute as written is also losing some specificity in the law as currently written. And so that would definitely be some good policy questions for the board. And so right now as written, as a matter of law, growers and producers have to provide their name and address, have to, provide whether they're growing or producing or testing hemp. And also have to provide the location and acreage of all the parcels where the hemp will be grown. And provide a statement that the seeds obtained for planting are a type of variety that do not exceed the federally defined THC concentration level for hemp. So that kind of regulation is not written into statute. It's not written into law. It could be as part of rulemaking and regulations. We'll get to that later in this bill. But this kind of level of scrutiny is no longer in the law, and the committee might want to kind of consider that what level of regulation you want in the law and what level of regulation you want to permit or require the CCP to do for rulemaking. Provide, if you're applying as a processor, you have to provide the location of your processing site. And if you're applying to test hemp or hemp products, provide a location of the site and proof of certification required by the secretary. And then any other information provided by the rules. It gives the secretary authorization to, verify the information, and then grounds for denial, which are largely the same here in the proposed bill.
Is that what the committee thinks, and our lawyer mind over there as well? I believe that should follow a rulemaking, not to put it in policy. But that's just my opinion. Is that leaving it too broad, Rob, if we don't put it in policy?
If we don't put it in policy.
Right, if you think, if they put it, will it have as much weight as a rule? If they put it in the rules as it does as policy? That's, I guess, a question. for you
Yeah,
as well.
I have Bradley, answer that. I answer yes.
Yes, yeah, and I agree. I think the weight is the same in rules versus the law. However, the only benefit of having it in the law is that for sure you're getting specific information. And so part of the rulemaking process is that the Cannabis Control Board could propose rules that might have this information or might not have this information. And so if there is something that the committee thinks should absolutely be part of that process and it is a non-starter, that probably should go into the statute as direction to the Cannabis Control Board to include in the rulemaking. So it is a policy choice to give them discretion or not. And if there are things that the committee feels strongly about that should be included in the regulation and application for applying for being a processor, producer, or for products, they should consider putting that in the statute. I'm just showing you that there is a difference, right? As currently is, that's in the law. Proposed, it's not. And then there's some sections about providing for retained test results that the secretary would do to inspect, and then retaining information for inspection with Public Records Act. That's not in the bill right now. And so it might be something that the committee can consider. We have rulemaking authority. This rulemaking authority is discretionary, and we have this may I just highlighted here. That is also discretionary in current law, and these provisions are brought over from current law, and so require hemp testing during certain growth levels, authorizing certain methods of hemp testing, requiring inspection or supervision of hemp during sowing growing season. The board might require rules about labeling and information as to comply with the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act, or to conform with federal requirements. It's similar to current law. I think this piece about specifically conforming with federal requirements is new, but likely how they had to do things before anyway. And establishing registration requirements, disclosure of labeling, an amount of the cannabinoid known to be present in the hemp product, so consumers have that information to know what's in it. And then some new things. So 7 and 9 are new. And so require that licensed registrants, including out-of-state purveyors and registered hemp products, obtain and maintain commercially reasonable insurance for which producers or consumers, consumer products in the final form shall include a product liability insurance. The board may provide rules to prohibit hazardous additives to hemp products and specify additive limits relative to substances that are toxic and not generally recognized as safe, and designed to make products more addictive or appealing to people under 21 or obviously consumers. And then specify when a registered hemp product that contains more than 0.4 milligrams of THC must be restricted for sale for persons of 21 age or older, or both. And so I just want to highlight these pieces. Sorry, question. Go on. Sorry.
So there's a vagueness to maintain commercially reasonable insurance. What I mean, does that mean? I mean, instead of putting a number on,
Or a statement that says to the level of,
yes,
Production.
yeah,
level of,
Yeah.
what? Is that Cannabis Control Board or
Yeah.
ATM Ag or whatever? I don't know what that level is.
And I think that's exactly right. You know, that piece there is ambiguous. Is perhaps the wrong word, but it's open to interpretation. A broad scope of items might fall in that category. And so if we want the board, or if the committee wants the board to requiring insurance for specific things, it should put that in the statute. Right now, reasonable insurance could be, liability insurance for harming other people or things of that sort, or protection of the crops, or it could require protection from natural disasters or something of the sort. It's a broad scope of things that could fit in there, and that's worth investigating with the board about what they would require. Another thing I want to point out about this piece, it looks like this section is designed to try and capture a lot of the hemp products that have proliferated since 2018, and so a lot of there's some concern about the number of products, how they're marketed on social media platforms like TikTok and things of that sort to minors, and so I think that's where the impetus for the federal law came from, is those concerns of those products proliferating and minors being addicted to those things. And so in addition, and the board will know more about this than I do, but in addition, there are ways to synthesize hemp to kind of make it more intoxicating. So this rule appears to try and capture that. I think that is a sensitive policy issue about how these products have been made, how they're marketed, and the concerns people have about minors having access to them when they might be marketed as treats or honey or gummies or things of that sort that look like something that you should be able to eat that doesn't have an intoxicating substance in it, but it might. And so that's an issue to get some more background about these certain products, because I'm sure those questions will come up as this bill moves. The board shall adopt rules, establish requirements for licensure and processes of hemp and hemp derived products and intermediaries and hemp products. And so that is the requirement for rulemaking. And then some more discretionary rulemaking may adopt rules for establishing requirements for the consumer sale of any products, and the requirements for making false or misleading or unsubstantiated claims about these products. These two are new. C and D are new in the statute. B is brought over from the laws that currently exist. And again, likely because of the proliferation of hemp-derived products that have come in the last 6 years or 8 years. I think the board might be looking at trying to create rules that frame that kind of put some parameters on how we market those products and things of that sort. We're discussing with them, and I want to flag that to the committee because that is the hot issue. Test results, and sure I'm following your notes around. The test results, what's changing here is that as a matter of law, we refer to, as a matter of law now, we refer to as a tetrahydral THC content of delta 9, THC content of 0.3 milligrams or more is not considered hemp. That is the federally accepted limit now. And so this bill is changing that to just federally defined THC. So it's taking out the delta 9. So delta 9 is it's a strain, and they're broadening the strains that would be potentially prohibited. And that is the major change here. So more hemp products with different strains that have high THC content would be prohibited as hemp. And that's how the federal law is changing right now. And the board, some enforcement authority from the board. It allows the board to enter premises where hemp is growing and processing, to inspect, to make sure things are going in accordance with the rules, including taking samples, inspecting records, and inspecting equipment or vehicles used to grow, process, and transport hemp. That is the same as the current law. Inspecting the retail location offering hemp products and hemp infused products, the same as in current law, and issue and enforce written or printed stop sale orders to the owner or custodian of a hemp product or hemp infused product, subject to the requirements of this chapter, and then some information about orders. So essentially, the court can order a certain product for being stopped from sale if it violates the state and federal standards of the THC concentrations and things of that sort, or other concentrations. And just some administrative procedures here. So if the board does give a stop sale order, the order shall include reasons, a description of the product, instructions, and any recommended measures. A person issued a stop sale order may appeal to the board within 15 days. Person shall file an appeal by serving a letter to the board. And then so that is just some regular administrative law pieces. And the administrative penalties. Okay, so this section is changing quite a bit from law as it currently is. And so I will show you the law as it currently stands in a moment. But basically, this section would give the board authority to issue violations and penalties without a limit, a statutory limit. And some applications, and then it says the board may enforce a final administrative penalty by filing a civil collection action in the Superior Court. Okay, so let's pull up the law as it exists. Scrolling down, administrative penalties. So the number one thing that I would recommend to the board here the first thing I'd recommend is the limits for the penalties have been taken out of the statute. And I'd recommend the committee to consider the amount of penalties that would be appropriate. That is typically that's authority that the legislature sets as guidance for administrative bodies, is limits on the amount of penalties. It is unusual for the legislature to completely delegate that authority, and so it's something to definitely consider as a matter of policy. Perhaps the numbers are not what they should be in statute as now, but that's something for the board, the committee to consider. There's two types of violations. Essentially, the kind of first type violation, not to exceed $1,000 for failure to provide information or obtain registrations, and then a $5,000 penalty for failure to follow corrective action. So you got a first penalty and then you fail to follow it, so you get a second one. And has grown or processed hemp in violation of the requirements of this chapter or rules. It has produced hemp in violation of the requirements of this chapter or rules adopted with culpable mental state greater than negligence. And so basically, if you violated the statute 3 times in a 5-year period, done so with a mental state greater than negligence, so you kind of knew what was going on, or failed to follow corrective action, that penalty could be higher.
Why did they not just put that in the, why did they take that out?
I think that would be a question for them. And
Because here's the committee, here's where I'm at. We change that, it's got to go everywhere in this building. This whole building, got to go everywhere in this building. So I think the question is, why won't we just keep it the way that it was? Unless they wanted to change that. And I don't know why they would have brought that to us for us to change when we've been very clear about what we're trying to do here, which is to help them regulate hemp. So for our farmers, and then let them, after it crosses the field, and then they're in violation of anything, that they're the ones that bring the hammer down. We're not. We have done a clear role of where we want to be, which is to help them grow. And then after that, if they violate, why, that's my thinking. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Bradley, the way this is written, this draft, not the current one.
Okay.
A grower could be fined $86,000 the first time, and to me, that's a little bit.
And I just don't want to make that decision. It's not up to us to make that decision where, it's up to them. They're the ones that are regulating. We are just helping them with the rules and helping to be very clear to our farmers where we lie. And then once that product comes out of the field and they do the bad stuff, then somebody else is gonna bring the hammer down. So I suppose I'd be my thing. Well, obviously talk with them and just leave leave that in there. If they want, if the agents or the Cannabis Control Board wants to change that, then let them change that. I suppose that's the conversation we have with them.
Yeah, I agree.
Or at least have them be the ones to set that policy. For them to say, okay, yeah, we heard you, Ag Committee. Yeah, we're going to go in there and we'll set that policy of what the penalties will be. I think it's a lot safer for us for them to do that, and then we don't get in arguments with any other committee in this building because they're the ones that did that.
And one other thing, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. And another thing that is removed from the proposed bill is kind of the guardrails on how to assess the penalties and administrative law notice requirements and things of that sort. So let's go over that. So first here, some guardrails. So the secretary may give consideration to the appropriateness of the penalty with respect to the size of the business being assessed, the gravity of the violation, good faith of the person being in the violation, overall compliance history of the person in violation. The secretary shall use the following procedure in assessing penalties, shall issue written notice of the violation, setting forth the facts and, sorry, my controls are, setting forth the facts, and I'm sorry that there's just some pop-ups on my screen. Good. And the notice required under the subdivision of the section shall comply with the following. So the notice be served by personal service of certified mail, advise the recipient of the right to a hearing if a hearing is requested, providing that, and the notice shall state the proposed penalty and shall advise the recipient that if no hearing requested, the decision is final, and the notice shall advise the recipient that they have 15 days from the date on which the notice is received to request a hearing, and any aggrieved party can file to a final decision, can appeal to the Superior Court within 30 days. This is required by the Administrative Procedure Act, and it is not in the statute as currently written. It is something similar is written into the Cannabis Control Board more broadly. And so if it is their vision to include administrative protections to hemp growers that they would provide to cannabis, perhaps a reference, perhaps putting this information back in. But these pieces are required: notice, written notice, what you did wrong, opportunity for appeal, right to appeal to the superior court. And if the statute is silent, you actually get the right to appeal right to the Supreme Court from an administrative decision. So as written, the statute takes that out. It only gives the board the right to file a civil collection action in a superior court to collect the penalty. So it does not give the right to appeal. Arguably, because it's silent on the right to appeal, an individual would have the right to appeal to the Supreme Court because that is the Administrative Procedure Act law. But I do think taking some of those things out, it is at minimum worth referencing other administrative procedure protections in the cannabis Title VII, or considering putting those back in as required by the Administrative Procedure Act. Something for the committee to consider here about why those were taken out and what the board is envisioning there in terms of protecting growers from penalties they think are unfair. The fee section also changed quite a bit, and so it is simplified. Producers, processors, or any products. These are the registration fees, and the fees under current law are quite a bit more. And so application for growing less than 0.5 acres of hemp for personal use is $25. Application of renewal of registration to grow or process hemp seed is $100, and except as provided below under section 4 down here. An application of renewal of registration to grow, process, or grow and process hemp commercially. And for these things, you can look at the fees. And so the fees are quite a bit higher based on acreage or pounds of hemp being processed. That has been taken out of the statute entirely for much smaller fees. And I'm flagging that view because those are policy considerations to be taken into consideration. And then for application of renewal of registration to operate exclusively within an indoor facility in order to grow or process. So just some kind of caveats here to reduce the fees required for certain uses.
Bradley, who gave us the language in that current bill? So who decided the process?
This, yes. So what is up is the Cannabis Control Board. I received this from Mr. Pepper.
Yeah.
And did he indicate why he dropped them so much?
No, but I just think, so he's been so respectful. We'll answer that at the end.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's fine.
so, yeah.
Yep.
And I realize I'm running out of time, so I will,
Okay, so the end.
if I can.
So here's, if you're okay, so here's what I think that we need to do, and I'm looking for counsel on this. I like what I see, I like all that, I like everything we're going on, but there's just so many, we get to the finding, or not the findings, but the administrative stuff, the fee stuff, and all of that, and I am in the mind of where Senator Heffernan was going, that you know, why, where, who, what. I think the next step is to just get everybody in the room, you, Cannabis Control, their attorney, let's hammer this stuff out. I don't think that we disagree with anything other than we'll get down to those sections and let's complete the bill. But I think it's very important for us to have them dictate what they want us to do, or because it's not really, we're really looking for them to tell us what they want us to do, not us to tell them what they want to do. I don't want to take over their role. I really don't. Been very clear from that. So if we could, Linda, get with everyone, James Pepper, their attorney, Mr. Showman, and get them back in, hammer this bill out so that when we're all said and done, once we see the final copy, we should just be able to sign it.
Maybe hemp grower too.
I think we're even beyond that. I think we're just into the point now where
Okay.
let's just get everybody in the room. let's get what they want to see as the final bill so that we can stamp it.
Okay.
This section just changes a cross-reference. We added that in another cross-reference that we changed in a different statute because we're moving the titles. I added that in. And then the last piece here is current use. The changes, I'm out of time, so I'll summarize the changes here. But we're at page 11. Some changes to current use. These changes concern enrollment, changes of use and enrollment of new buildings. And so it changes the requirements. So for first, you have to, an owner has to certify at the time of application or enrollment that the agricultural land or buildings enrolled by that owner will continue to meet the requirements for enrollment in the program, and that the owner will immediately, this is what's changing, immediately notify the commissioner of any change in use that makes the enrolled land or building ineligible for continued use value appraisal.
Yeah.
And then there's some language here. In the event that the owner of agricultural lands or buildings enrolled in the use value program fails to timely notify the commissioner of any change that disqualifies the enrolled land from the use value program, the owner shall be required to repay the commissioner all benefits improperly received because the land or building is subject to use value appraisal. So it creates a kind of recoupment mechanism for failure to notify changes in use. And then there's an interest penalty potentially. It's not a penalty, it's a reasonable interest on any benefit repayment. And if the owner fails to promptly repay the benefit, the amount shall constitute a lien that runs with the land in accordance with a subdivision of this chapter. If the commissioner has any reason to believe that the enrolled agricultural land or building may not be eligible for use value appraisal, the commissioner may require that the owner to certify in writing under oath within 30 days following request that the buildings remain eligible or file as a change of use form. So basically, if the commissioner has reason to believe that the use has changed, they have authority to require either assertion that it hasn't or a change of use form within 30 days.
I'm somewhat even questioning why that's even in there when there's already rules on current use. But again, when we get everybody in the room, unless you have something
I don't have the history on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And then the last piece here is a little quicker. It's qualification for use value appraisal. So this section changes if a new building is constructed. And so it shall be initially presumed that new buildings are improvements on enrolled agricultural land or on a house site adjoining the enrolled agricultural land are farm buildings for use value appraisal if the new buildings or improvements are a kind typically used in agriculture. Assessing individuals can communicate with the owner to ask about the intended use of the improvement. And the commissioner can determine whether the new building or improvement is eligible for the use value program. Commissioner can require the owner to provide information to determine eligibility. And in the interim, before the commissioner makes a determination, assessing officials' assessment of a new building or improvement to the owner claims as a farm building shall be at use value appraisal to ensure adequate time for enrollment and to prevent erroneous fair market assessments of farm buildings.
that's beautiful language for the bill that we're going to be taking up here again. The second part of the bill that is on the miscellaneous language, and I'm probably going to suggest to cannabis control, why don't we just drop that language right off of this bill? Because I just think it gets into out of the flavor of what we're trying to do here. It goes from regulating cannabis or hemp growers into act policy. And so anyways, we'll talk about that. We'll get everybody in the room, but my encouragement would be to say, why do we need that? Why is this important? Cannabis Control Board, why is this important to have that language in on this bill when we're just trying to regulate and give clear guidance to hemp growers? So that's where I would be on that.
Any other questions for me?
Oh, we will have.
We'll have you in as soon as Linda can get your schedule, when your schedule is good, and we can get everybody in. I want to thank you very, very much. Appreciate that. That was good. You do look at the areas of concerns that we're gonna have, and so thank you.
Pleasure.
Committee, we're running, a little bit over, so if everybody's good, if we can just jump right into the next segment. And, make sure that we don't, get these people away from, so yeah, so we're, going to, spend some time with Vermont Feeding Vermonters. And, who wants to lead this segment off?
Hello.
Okay.
And I think Abby's gonna.
Yeah.
Upstairs, yeah.
Yeah.
But before we start, I don't have the Zoom link, emailed to me.
I sent it to you this morning. Did you not get it?
I didn't.
I mean, yesterday. I'll send it again.
Yeah,
And your email is,
While we're waiting for that, we want to have Abby, do we have any opening comments before we go? We can start with that. Just to save some time here, because we have cut you off about, 7, 8, 9 minutes.
Sure, I'd be happy to go if the committee welcomes that.
Go ahead.
Okay. For the record, Abby Willard, Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets. Excited to be here with the Vermont Food Bank to talk about the Vermonters Feeding Vermonters program. This is a program that's existed at the food bank for quite some time, but due to Act 34 last year of 2025, statute created a grant program at the Agency of Agriculture to support the food bank to provide food to people facing hunger by supporting the purchasing of local food from Vermont farms. So we now have a role in this program, and an opportunity for state appropriation funds to support the food bank in the implementation of the Vermonters Feeding Vermonters program. Part of the legislation of Act 34 said that the Vermont Food Bank, in consultation with the Agency of Agriculture, would provide an annual report to the Senate Ag Committee and the House Ag and Forestry Committee on or before March 1st. So I think in part that explains why we're here today and the report that Chris will share with the committee. An important piece that I just want to note is the thoughtful connection that Vermonters Feeding Vermonters as a program and this partnership of a granting program through the agency aligns with Vermont's food security roadmap. And an aspect of that that's really important to the Agency of Agriculture is this inextricable link between achieving food security through farm viability and support of viable farm businesses. And so just acknowledging that concept that Vermont's food security depends upon a viable agricultural sector is an important message for us to keep front and center. So the FY26 appropriation to the Agency of Agriculture in support of the Vermonters Feeding Vermonters program was $500,000. That, and Chris will talk and speak to this, but the decision was made for us to establish a grant agreement with the food bank that supported one aspect of the Vermonters Feeding Vermonters program that was targeting the procurement of local food from local farms and then the distribution of that food through the established food bank partnerships and distribution channels. That's not the entire cost of the entire kind of scope of the Vermonters Feeding Vermonters program. There's additional aspects beyond what our grant agreement provided granting funds for. So if it's helpful, I thought I could just very briefly go through the establishment of the agreement for the granting program and note that in the governor's recommended budget for fiscal year 27, there's not an appropriation towards this granting program to the food bank in support of the Vermonters Feeding Vermonters program. In October is when we actually established the grant agreement with the food bank. We allowed for pre-award costs dating back to July 1st, which is when Act 34 put into effect the availability of the funds and would make the funding available for the entire fiscal year 26. Again, we targeted the focused purpose of this granting program and this $500,000 to support the purchase of local food from Vermont farms to be distributed through the grantees' distribution channels. We set 3 targets for the distribution and the execution of those funds, which was aligned with, again, the language in Act 34 that this body supported, which was we wanted to track the total amount of food purchased from those grant funds. the total number of farms that food was purchased from, and the total number of distribution sites where that local food was distributed through. We built into the structure of the grant program, if it's helpful to know, an interim report that would be due at the end of February of this year that could coincide with the timeline of submitting an annual report to the legislature, and then a final report on or before August of this year of 2026. And then the distribution of funds happens in 3 claims. So 40% upfront at the beginning of the project, 40% at the submission of an interim report, and then a withholding of the final 20% of the grant award until the final report is submitted. So that's our standard kind of like distribution of funding of 40, 40, 20%. And that's it. It's been great to work with the food bank. They're a longstanding partner of the Agency of Agriculture, and to have this like very direct relationship of the establishment of a granting program has been a joy to engage in. And I think Chris and the team can share a whole lot more about the specifics of the program and the accomplishments that they've had thus far.
Thank you, Abby. And good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
We have a hard stop at 20 after. I hate to cut you in that way, but tell us what you'd like us to know.
Yes, I'm Chris Meehan, and I'm the Chief Community Impact Officer with the Vermont Food Bank. I live in Middlesex, Vermont. And I am going to share my screen so that we can take a presentation that I have.
It's on our webpage too.
Would that be? Okay. So yeah, I'm here today to tell you a little bit of an overview of Vermonters Feeding Vermonters. I will try to be brief, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about fiscal year to date, what we have been able to accomplish. An overview of the program. First, I want to say thank you so much to this committee for passing, for supporting Act 34 in 2025.
Chris, I'm sorry, but you're sharing, you're off, you're not part of the meeting, you have to go back. Chris, do you want me to handle the Slack part and you can handle the talking part, or?
Sure.
That'd be helpful. Do you mind?
I mean, I can,
It's a lot to do with all.
I think we all have it up.
Well, we have it here as far as.
Okay.
I can also share it from here if that's helpful.
Oh, yeah, actually, Abby, why don't you do that part and Chris can just follow.
okay, thanks, Abby. I had it. Okay, so Vermonters Feeding Vermonters, as Abby mentioned, is a program of the Vermont Food Bank, and we work to provide fresh, local, nutritious food to people facing hunger. And, you know, while we're doing that, we're able to build relationships and support Vermont farmers and to reduce our environment. You can see we have some guiding principles that really, you know, sort of help to guide our work. And I won't go into those today because I want to share a little bit more about the results so far. There are 3 components to Vermonters Feeding Vermonters. One is large scale, wholesale direct purchasing. And this is what the state funding has supported. We also provide grants to Vermont Food Bank partners so that they can connect locally with smaller farms and purchase food. And we have some special projects and grants to work with food bank partners to provide culturally responsive foods to Vermonters, folks in Vermont. So as I said, really what the state funds have helped us to do is to provide those large scale contracts with Vermont farmers. And so here are the strategies, the goals and strategies related to specifically to the state investment. It's to purchase a diversity of fresh, nutritious, locally produced food, to pay farmers a fair market price, and really to provide them with those large scale contracts so that they have that security, knowing that sales are coming, and they can predict before the growing season begins when they're doing their planning. And so here are the results for this year so far. We have the Vermont Food Bank in total have purchased over $1 million with Vermont farmers in those large scale contracts, and 500,000 of that was thanks to the FY26 state appropriation. We have worked with 21 farmers to do that direct purchasing. We purchased over 40 types of produce that has been distributed to over 236 Vermont Food Bank partners and events. And, based on a large scale wholesale for food purchasing research project that was conducted by UVM, that is 165 million into the Vermont economy. And so the $500,000 the state has invested has resulted in 800,000 estimated to the state economy. Some of the benefits of our direct purchasing part of the program is that we can provide full pallet quantity purchasing. We are also willing to purchase surplus crops. We have a flexibility on the varieties that we purchase. And we, as I said, we are able to plan contracts at least 6 months ahead of time. Some of the things this past winter of 2025, we did a survey of our farmers that we work with, and here's just a few of the results that they named specifically about this program. That 100% of them reported they have increased stability as a result and increased gross sales. 100% of them report increasing the amount of food that is going to families with limited incomes. And 92% of them report an increase in the amount of food that is kept in Vermont. And, one of the feel good parts of this program is honestly how it makes farmers feel about their food staying in Vermont and going to folks who might not otherwise be able to afford it. So here are just some quotes that, feels really good to know that the food is staying in Vermont, and by working with the Vermont Food Bank, they're able to know that this food is going to food insecure families. And just a few more quotes here. Noting the stability that this provides them, knowing they're going to get a reasonable price, they're able to hire another full-time person. We've had a lot of really positive results coming back to us from Vermont farmers. That's all I'd like to share.
Well, let's get through some numbers, okay? As far as your asks and all of that stuff, so this committee could totally understand where we're to advocate for or what's going on. So tell us about where you've been in the building, what you got for money, what the governor has said, and all of that stuff, so that we can know. Yes,
Can I?
of course you can.
Can I
Yes,
offer an
please.
assist?
Please do.
Thank you. And for the record, I'm Carrie Saylor. I'm the government affairs officer for Vermont Food Bank. So I was here a little while ago and talked to this committee about our budget adjustment request.
Yeah.
We were asking for the difference between the $500,000 we were appropriated in FY26 and the $2 million we requested. So we were requesting that 1.5 difference. Currently in the Senate version of the budget adjustment, there is $360,000. There was $400,000 in the House version. And so our hope is that once that BAA passes out of the Senate, it goes to conference committee, unless that happened and I may have missed it. Okay. Like, was that a yesterday thing?
Yeah.
So in the conference committee, our hope is that that amount will be returned to the $400,000 through the conversation with those committees.
That gets you 500,000 plus 400,000.
Yep,
Okay.
that gets us 900,000. That would go to additional direct purchasing from larger scale farms because of the timeline of where we're at in the growing season and the existing relationships we have with those farm vendors. And then for FY 27, which would start on July 1st of this year, we're requesting the same $2 million that we requested last year. And part of the sort of budget adjustment plus FY 27 process for us is something that Chris was talking about. That makes it really important is that we're really contracting for the FY 27 growing season right now. And so the budget adjustment money really helps us bridge into the growing season, and having additional funding in FY 27 will help sort of the state calendar and the growing season, as I'm sure this committee has probably heard from others. They don't really align well with Vermont, with the way Vermont works. Farms have to plan in January, some earlier, to really know what they're gonna the harvest in October. And that really crosses that state funding line in a way that can make it hard to plan ahead for, and to really help our farms that we're working with plan ahead for the scale of purchasing that we want to do with them. The agency has been very supportive and very helpful in their contracting process. And I do just want to call that out, like working with the Agency of Agriculture for contracting and with Abby. It's so helpful to work with a knowledgeable agency who understands what Vermont farms really need. It makes the system work a lot better for those of us who are sort of working on both sides of the purchase and distribution spectrum. So I do think that if we can get just that funding lined up in a consistent way that we know we can count on, then it really allows us to accomplish the full scope of Vermonters feeding Vermonters in a way that supports farms across the calendar, right, in a consistent and reliable way, which is what every farm is looking for.
Okay, so in 2006, that's passed. I mean, I know that we're still fighting for some dollars and all of that. 2007, so I can understand it, the committee can understand it as well. You've been in the governor's budget for 2027?
We are not in the governor's budget for
You're asking
2027.
for 2 million.
We are asking for 2 million.
Okay.
Yeah, and that is really the
And-
amount that going forward we
And
would love.
in your quest to get there, you've been into appropriations already and played your case with them.
We have been waiting for the budget adjustment process to end. We have introduced our request to appropriations, but have not necessarily had the in-depth conversations because it is really similar to our budget adjustment ask. So we wanted to make sure that was clear.
I totally understand that. We just need to know,
Yep, and
it's just in our brain.
Yep, and so next on my list is to follow up with Senator Norris, who really handles the agriculture requests, and Senator Kirchlich, and make sure that they fully understand.
Sure.
This is part of a larger request for FY 27. Our total FY 27 request is $5 million. The other pieces of that request are really sort of being asked of other committees. Senate Government Operations that we've spoken to you a little bit, Senator Palomar, and Senate Health and Welfare, who we have also started to talk to a little bit about those pieces. So we're doing the rounds, but have sort of waited until this budget adjustment process moves forward.
Committee?
Also.
Well,
Thanks,
thank
Gary.
you.
Thank you so much for your
Thank you
time.
very much. I'm glad
Thank
you
you.
were able to get through your
Yeah.
presentation and we didn't short you.
Yeah, thank
That took a little more time.
We appreciate it very much. We do. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you, Abby.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
I think we're kind of clear about what we did this morning. If anybody has to speak up, but I think, it's important, to get, all groups aligned on the half part of what we were doing and just get them in the room and hammer that bill out. I think at this point in time, we kind of know what we want to do. I think I know what direction we want to be in. And I do respect the Cannabis Control Board, allowing us to have more of a say. But I think that we're almost to the point to where the hemp people are saying we want regulation. I want to say the Cannabis Control Board, I want you to have the regulation part of that. We want to grow hemp. That's what we want to do. And I don't believe that we would ever get that bill through at this short time point if we start making policy decisions. I think it needs to come from them. That's what they want. And, so that's where I'm thinking. Everybody thinks any different, just let me know.
Also,
Okay, good. Then we'll go off.